Today, the World Health Organization officially announced that this is a global pandemic.
In the next several days to a week or so, we're going to continue to see things go up. We cannot be discouraged by that because the mitigation is actually working.
The unvaccinated overcrowd our hospitals, and I'm moving forward with vaccination requirements wherever I can.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Otto. You're currently watching bonus episode 9, our final bonus episode of COVID Secrets, and we've got lots of insightful information lined up for you. This episode is all about the battle for medical freedom, and so far the COVID pandemic is one of the biggest we've had to face yet. Many of our experts have been advocating for our right to choose what we will and won't allow into our bodies, fighting against the vaccine mandates and other invasive medical protocols that Big Pharma, the government, and medical authorities have been pushing on us since the start of the pandemic. We know this is just the start of further tyranny and coercion, that the ultimate plan behind the pandemic is to push people into getting more vaccines that are extremely harmful to our bodies. We've already seen the serious threats that people have received when they've tried to stand up for their right to choose not to be vaccinated. We've also seen how people have had no say over their loved ones' medical treatments when they're hospitalized, and there's more than enough evidence to show that people who have been hospitalized have been getting the wrong treatment, leading to some of them even dying. These things all go against our right to medical freedom, our right to choose whether we want to take the risk in getting vaxxed or not, the right to access the correct early treatments, the right to be involved in our loved ones' medical care, and the right to get informed consent for any medical protocol or procedure we're agreeing to. Our first expert, Laurie Sherman, is a nurse who shares her first-hand experience of how people have been continuously denied their rights to medical freedom of choice. She explains how they've faced serious coercion and even been harmed in the process. Hi, it's Jonathan Otto here, and I'm with Laurie Sherman, and I'm excited to hear from you, Laurie, in regard to what you've been experiencing from your professional experience. Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Hi, well, I'm an RN in Ohio, and I was working in a disabled classroom at the time when COVID hit and the lockdowns happened, and I began working more in agency contract nursing. So I was being sent to different facilities to fill in when their workers were unavailable. And so I saw a lot of different facilities. I saw a lot of different doctors and nurses and protocols happening. And what I started to see was a growing pressure, not only for professionals to have vaccine, but for patients, even ones that couldn't really make that decision. A lot of coercion, a lot of ostracizing of both patients and healthcare professionals. I have seen people be totally separated from loved ones and not be able to ask their loved ones questions or try to support them in decision making. I've seen a lot of people be totally scared and have absolutely no idea what to do and totally relying on the healthcare professionals that are basically, working, all driving towards the same thing. I've definitely seen younger people who've had the vaccine come through with COVID worse than people I've seen outside of the hospital situation, outside of the facilities, and people with strokes, people with heart attacks, people with blood clots in their legs that never had any history of that before. And some of them aren't even willing to even consider the fact that it might be a side effect. They're really just trusting everything that they're being told. And I'm looking at it and my heart's bleeding for them, that there's something wrong, something very wrong is going on. And I just felt it in my heart. And it's been very challenging to work in that field and feel like you're being told to say certain things and to do certain things and not to say certain things. You're going from a place where you really want to love on people and heal people and help them, and instead it feels like you're helping the worst happen.
Yeah, wow. Wow, Laurie, that is, you're kind of one of those people that I don't envy being of what it feels like to be in that situation. Nurses are so empathetic, good nurses. And often people that are empathetic become nurses and they care for people. And it's easier when you hate people or you feel like people just deserve it, or if you believe the earth needed to be depopulated, it'd be kind of easy to handle, just right. But then when people don't think any of those things and they just feel like, well, I just love people and I'm here to get people better, it's just torture and it's horror for what you and others are having to experience. And I appreciate you sharing it. You mentioned some people that had injuries, but they don't believe that it was from the vaccine. So that would mean that these people have not reported their injury to the vaccine adverse event reporting system, correct?
Correct. I actually had encouraged a couple of them to do so, and they felt, because a physician or another healthcare professional had told them, well, you must have had something in your family line and it's just genetic. And some of them were in their 40s and 50s, very healthy individuals with no medical history at all whatsoever, not on any medications prior. And to me, that's very atypical. That is not usually the case for people to have heart attacks, strokes, and blood clots. That's not what you would see prior to all of this vaccination. To me, it sparks questions. And I've worked actually in a doctor's office where there were studies done, and I know that you report any side effects within a certain time frame after having a new medication or vaccine, and then they determine based on the statistics what the possibility is that it's a side effect. So they needed the reports, whether you think that it is a side effect or not. They need that to determine it. And if they're being told otherwise, no, don't report it, it's probably genetic, it's no big deal, it's not from that, they're not reporting. And so the numbers that we're seeing, although they're high, they're still not even touching the real numbers.
That's interesting. So your estimations are that they're obviously a lot higher. I guess you could take your own ratio of the people that you have seen a direct correlation between their adverse event and the vaccine. How many people have you ever met? Well, how many people have you met that have had that happen to them, an injury, and how many of those people have reported to VAERS?
Out of the people that I've seen that had a potential injury, none of them have reported it.
And are you talking about like 2 or 3 people, or?
I would say the people that I have suspected could be is closer to 10, 15 people, and that they haven't been encouraged by any other healthcare professional, and they have stated that they didn't think that they needed to when I've attempted to encourage them.
There you go. And so, like, if it was 10 people, for example, and not even one of them has reported, then we're starting to show that I was going to do a 10-to-1 ratio, but that would require there have been one that had filed. So it means that, like, that number could go up to, well, this is what the Harvard study showed, that it was basically up to 100, because there's fewer than 1% of vaccine adverse events are ever reported due to lack of patient awareness, it being a manual system, no follow-up, all that kind of stuff. Just they listed the reasons. People should be very aware of that.
Hi, it's Jonathan Otto here, and I'm thrilled to be with Cvid because you've always been on the cutting edge of the issues at stake, and that is super helpful because it helps us all to be able to work out, where's the belly of the beast? How do we get to the core of what's actually happening so we're not just running in all the directions that they want us to run in with pointing fingers and yelling and angry at our relatives and all the kinds of things that they've tried to create versus we just stay focused on the real issues. And I appreciate your continued efforts to stay on the real issues and not just kind of use this opportunity to get your own name and self out there. You're just dedicated to the cause, so thank you for being that kind of person, and thanks for taking the time with me.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's not necessarily something that I do because it has any benefit to me personally to go ahead and jump on issues like this. And the reality is that all of us are in the same boat now. And I think we all need to step up and go ahead and do what's right. So that's why, I asked you if, this might be an appropriate topic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a very appropriate topic. So, look, there's been, fast forward for people. So, Saya, we were in personal contact, just talking a lot and texting, and you were giving me different insights as the pandemic was originally unfolding. And there are certain things that you've been studying for years leading up to this. So some of the guys that are kind of known for speaking out on these vaccines were people that even took them themselves, whereas people such as yourself were warning people about these types of things coming down the line close to a decade or more ago. So that's the kind of thing that we need right now. So when it comes to some of the big plays that are happening, Saya, what are you seeing is the agenda right now? Where's the push, and what can we do about it? We'll get there in time, but what's some of the big issues you're seeing? I know that these words, New World Order, get rattled around. I referred to the mask as being the uniform of the New World Order, and so there's a what's some of this new information that's coming out that they're trying to push?
Okay, so it's helpful for people to understand that the World Health Organization has been working really behind the scenes to create the equivalent of a one government world health order, if you will. And in fact, it was back in 2021 that the World Health Assembly, which is the WHO's 194-member health policy forum, they start to initiate a global process of drafting a new pandemic treaty. And so essentially what they were doing is building off of already existing international health regulations that were drafted and ratified in 2005. It's known as the IHR. And that instrument is actually legally binding. What that means is that the World Health Organization, in times of declared global health emergencies, such as a variant of coronavirus in the case of COVID-19, they can essentially preempt the sovereignty of these nation states who are members and say that, listen, this is a global health problem. You need to lock down, or you need to go ahead and surveil your citizens, or mandate testing and or other things such as vaccination. So we have basically a consolidation of power going on behind the scenes by this global bureaucratic body that actually isn't as independent and governmental as people think, because they have primary funders such as the Gates Foundation, which actually it was in 2021, they contributed, I think it was $890 million from their fund to support the World Health Organization. And in fact, the World Health Organization has something called the World Health Foundation, right? So they have the equivalent of the CDC Foundation, where they can take the money from corporations, private individuals, NGOs, which then have influence on the policies. Now, they wouldn't admit this, but clearly that's the conflict of interest challenge in this day and age, is if you follow the money, you find that there are billions of dollars that are being exchanged behind the scenes, ostensibly to support the cause of global health security and the well-being of this planet's inhabitants. But we know that for the World Health Organization and through the approach that they've taken during the so-called pandemic, is that they equate health with being injected with experimental gene-modifying technology. So, for them, vaccination is bona fide immunity, for example. This whole construct that is not evidence-based and quite the contrary, I believe, can cause many unintended adverse effects that are far worse than the threat that is being proposed. So fundamentally, people should be aware that back in December 2021, this process was engaged, and that just recently, on March the 3rd, there was a major announcement, which is that they are moving forward in negotiating this treaty. And again, this treaty would legally bind member states effectuating what is essentially a one world government when it comes to health policy. And as we've all seen, health policy isn't some abstract thing that happens in hospitals. It actually affects whether the everyday man and woman can go and make a living because their business might be described as non-essential, or maybe they're being told they need to get 4 jabs in order to make a living. So this is not some abstract process. This is something that is going to affect probably every human on this planet, and yet conspicuously there is silence on the matter. If you go and look at the news aggregators and you type in pandemic treaty, you'll find a couple articles all positively spun, but you won't actually get to the heart of the matter, which is that we are losing our sovereignty as a nation by our participation in the World Health Organization and this agenda. And by virtue of that fact, all our civil liberties, our human rights, our individual right to determine what happens to our bodies are also being basically being destroyed by this process. So this is a really important issue, and I'm really glad you're helping me to get the word out about it.
Thank you, Saya.
At the time, we had moved 2 years before, and my brain was getting so bad. My brain, wow. I had gotten so bad that I was, when I was talking to people, I wasn't finishing sentences because I'd forget what I was talking about. And I just couldn't remember things. And this has been fabulous for me to really be getting my brain back. So I bought the protocol, the 3-month protocol. After the 3-month thing, I was starting to just feel better. But what I really noticed was my brain. Wow. I've got so much energy. Nothing ever did anything besides your program. I was so miserable, and now I'm just so much better. I have fibromyalgia, Sjogren's, chronic fatigue, Hashimoto's, and then, like I say, this bad brain. It's gone.
Hey, it's Jonathan. I'm so glad you've been joining me, and thank you for joining me in these bonus episodes. This is our final bonus episode. I'm sorry to say that, but I'm also excited to say that because the next chapter is the most powerful one. This is only the beginning. This is like the first step in the journey. This has been the last 2 weeks. Imagine what your life will look like after the next 2 or 3 months being on a journey with us, learning from this information, continuing on this with your knowledge of what your body can do when you put the right things in and take the right things out. And by that I mean detoxification. The kinds of things that you can do with your health is nothing short of amazing, and I want you to achieve this reality in your life, and you can do that with this program that we're making available to you. Own COVID Secrets, the silver or gold package today. Remember, you're fully covered by a 60-day money-back guarantee with no questions asked. Remember that you'll be getting your books and your DVDs if you get the physical or the physical and digital component, as well as your online membership where you can access all the videos, all the bonus content. There's 60 full-length interviews. We just added 10 full-length interviews that are with experts that you can see listed here. So we've been adding to this already as we speak. The question and answer sessions that come inside of your amazing bonus programs, such as Brain Healing Breakthrough, the answer to autoimmune disease, and Heal, vaccine injury recovery and immune protocol. The transcripts, the ability to read, the printed books that go to your house that you can flip through, and your online membership so you can share that with people that you love. You can dive into your online membership anytime you like, completely censorship free. I can't wait to see you inside of this program. I know how life-changing this will be for you, and just watch what happens to your lives. See how people like Natalia and Gail and my wife Lori, Lori's sister Erin, my father-in-law, and Liana, see how they use this information to achieve abundant health in their life. See how I've got multiple people within my own family that have achieved abundant health by using the very tools that are in front of you. And of course, I put my very best into this. If you've enjoyed this series, you'll absolutely enjoy what's inside of this program. And I don't want you to miss out on it. I know how life-changing it'll be for you. Can't wait to see you inside the program. Thank you so much for considering this, and I hope you enjoy this bonus episode. Remember, everything is closing down. This is episode 9. And we're ending all these free gifts and offerings, and we don't want you to miss out on this because I know how life-changing this will be for you. So simply click the buttons or the banner below. Remember, when episode 9 is completed, that will conclude your opportunity to own this amazing series. So make sure to take advantage of this today while you can here on this page, and I can't wait to see you inside of this program. All the free gifts, the $1,591 worth of new gifts that we just added, the already existing gifts and bonuses on the page will all expire. The 50% off discount, the 71% off discount will all expire at the close of this episode. So I absolutely don't want you to miss out on this if this is something that you know that you want and you want to achieve this abundance in your health. So make sure to take advantage of this here on this page before we close it down in a matter of hours from now or even minutes. So click the buttons or the banner below this page to get started, and I can't wait to see you inside this program.
When George Bush Sr. said, it's a big idea, I believe this was 1994, it's a big idea, a new world order, where all states come together, or all states or countries come together in one common cause. Yeah, where all countries come together in one common cause, but he may say states, but it's inclusive of countries. Only the United States has the moral power and the means to back it up. And so when he was talking about these things, when we look on the $1 bill and it says Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Order of the Ages, right? And then that Inuit, the top two words mean basically an oath of secrecy to create a one world order or a new world order. And so these kinds of ideas have been very much touted, spoken about in the past. It appears that secret societies, again, I mean, I'm getting into a deep level here, have been pushing these things, but whether someone wants to see that or not, on the very surface level, the verbiage that is being used in this treaty is in fact the words New World Order, but it's just got some other words in between it, but it's basically just letting you know so that it's like its own virtue signaling amongst the elites of saying, like, this is what this is, make sure you support this, this is part of the new world moving forward. So it's so important for people to know about this, and I appreciate you sharing this. You know, I'd love you to keep sharing more, maybe even screen share, if you will, to take us through it so we can see it face to face, if possible.
So yeah, what I could do is probably do a little screen share here. Let's see, share, and go ahead and share the screen. Okay, so really quick, we reported on this on Greenman Info, and interestingly, there is a analytical piece here that was published in 2020, which was actually titled "The International Health Regulations, the Threat of Popularism and COVID-19 Pandemic." And so what they were talking about in this academic paper was actually that there is a need, this was their argument, for a new global public health world order. So they're using this phrase, the new global public health world order, as if it's the answer to, all that stands in the way of humanity being in peace and, disease-free and working in harmony. And so there is something to be said then about, you're referencing, this sort of like subculture of conspiracy, theory around there being some secret group of elites that are trying to create really a pyramidal control structure where there's only a couple people on top that are pulling the strings. And fundamentally, now we're seeing this being rolled out and discussed publicly in academic journals. Now, in this particular paper, which was published in BMC journal Globalization and Health, they were actually making the argument that the 2005 international health regulations, which are now internationally binding as a legal instrument on the 194 member nations of the World Health Organization, isn't strong enough. That because of popularism or the resistance among those who asked very simple questions, such as myself initially, I went to the World Health Organization page on masks and community-acquired respiratory illness transmission. And they had a white paper there discussing how it made no sense to mask the public the way that they ultimately did recommend the entire world do so, because the masks actually might increase the transmission of a community, spread respiratory virus because they're fomites, right? They accumulate biological debris. They're dirty. There's just no evidence to support this. So So in that circumstance, you can look at the most respected health organization, right, among conventional folks, and their own, papers on the topic were saying, no, this is a bad idea. But of course, it all became extremely political, and they rolled the agenda out, mandated the masks. And this is the type of policy that they're now trying to institutionalize and make permanent, to the point where if a member nation doesn't follow suit when the World Health Organization declares a new scare, a new variant, whatever it may be, real or imagined, then there'll be severe restrictions put on them, which includes things like sanctions and penalties. And this is unfortunately why there is a lot of there's a lot of problems here with a one world government, isn't there? When you have just a few individuals whose funding actually comes from corporations, and these massive billionaire funds, they're the ones who are calling the shots. It's not evidence, it's not published peer-reviewed science. It is arbitrary, and ultimately those agendas are what is pulling the strings. So when we see them come out the gates, declare that they're going to create a new pandemic treaty, because they've already told us that there are going to be more pandemics, there's going to be an infinite number of variants, and of course they've already set things up where they're developing all these new vaccines in anticipation. This is a pretty bleak picture if we allow them to do this without oversight and public discussion and an opportunity for us to be able to look closely at what it is they are proposing. So ultimately, Jonathan, it's because of events like this, people like yourself, the listeners, that we're going to have an opportunity. This isn't just going to get rubber stamped. We're going to be able to discuss it openly, and because we have national sovereignty, we have a constitution, for example, that cannot be preempted by this bureaucratic body, unless, of course, this rolls on forward without us saying anything about it, without us going ahead and taking a positive action. So that's why we're having this conversation now.
Thank you, Saya. I appreciate your commentary on this, and I feel like you're able to explain some of these concepts of understanding how an agenda like a one world government, like mass surveillance, like controlling people's behaviors from what goes into their body, potentially they're obviously, from what we understand, with even the intention to harm, some deeper agendas that we probably won't hypothesize on at this point, even though perhaps we can give a teaser at some point during this conversation of why we think this is happening, so that people can kind of try to align with some of the values that maybe are the real values that are being attacked here, because the freedom of thought and the ability for us to be loving, healthy, happy human beings in families that are self-autonomous, on the basis of people's religious views, but under their own conscience in relationship with God, however they understand these things, the freedom to practice such things is all part of the beauty and importance of what we really have and cherish and hold dear, what wars have been fought over in the past and presently. So I appreciate the fact that we're really bringing these two worlds together here in terms of freedom, what we stand for, what we've been, basic good patriotism and self-sovereignty and autonomy, even as these are very deeply Christian values among other religions and faiths as well. And then you have this medical issue, and they're obviously trying to take a fear that people have and then loop people and push people into this agenda. Any commentary you have on some of the thoughts that I put forward there?
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to understand. I'll just share the screen real quickly here, is that ultimately, when it comes down to it, what we witnessed in the 2 years of the declared international health emergency there was a manipulation of death statistics such that they changed the ICD codes for emergencies so that if you had someone walk into a hospital or get brought in and there was no virus test that was administered, there's no confirmation that they have any unique type of viral infection. All it took was suspicion of infection, and you could you could write them off as dead from COVID.
Next, we'll hear from Mary Holland, who's a prolific attorney that's been battling the agendas for a long time now. She emphasizes how we need to be paying attention to the international health regulations that are being negotiated within the World Health Organization to have ultimate control over our medical rights. Then we'll hear from Tom Barnett, who gives us insight into how to stand up for ourselves when we're feeling powerless. We'll conclude our episode with Laurie Sherman. Laurie Sherman shares how emotional it has been as a nurse seeing people facing life or death situations without having the freedom to make medical decisions or their loved ones to do this on their behalf. Now, coming over to something very current, the Pfizer documents that have just come out as of March, maybe it was 7th, and this was very interesting. It talked about here 1,223 people that had died as a result from the shot, and yet it didn't classify how many people this was pulled from, so you didn't have an ability to cross-reference this and work out what that number was. Regardless, 1,223 deaths is a lot more than the 50 plus deaths that were from the swine flu vaccine in 1976. So what do you think that this document tells us in regard to the narrative crumbling and people being aware now of the damaging effects of this vaccine?
Yeah. So kudos to this group, the Public Health, Medical, and Scientific Group for Transparency, represented by attorney Aaron Siri, and it's a case in the Northern District of Texas in federal district court. And actually, what you're referencing, Jonathan, that 1,223 deaths, that was actually disclosed in November, and Children's Health Defense and the Defender wrote about that in early December. Now, the court, to its great credit, has said, the FDA tried to say, oh, we want 55 years to not, give you these documents. And then the Pfizer weighed in and said, oh, we want 75 years to give you these documents. And the court said, no way, guys. And they required them to now be making documents available under Freedom of Information Act every month. And so a big tranche of documents just became available March 1st. But that's going to be happening every month. And we can see, frankly, evidence that Pfizer is in some sense like quivering in its boots, because they did not want or apparently expect that these documents would have to be made available. Remember that I believe in a fraudulent process, the FDA granted licensure for the FDA's approved version of its Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine called Comirnaty. Now, there's not a single vial of Comirnaty available in the whole United States because there might be liability for that. It's not available. They only have the emergency use authorization version available yet. But because the FDA actually went through that approval process, there really was no viable rationale or excuse for the FDA not to turn over those documents. Now, they still have some redactions, as you pointed out. They didn't give us the denominator for those 1,223 deaths. But in the first 90 days of the use of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine that started in December 2021, there were over 1,000 deaths. In addition to that, the 6-month data from the clinical trials that was fairly recently released by Pfizer showed that the all-cause mortality was higher in the vaccine group than the placebo group. The reality is, Jonathan, these vaccines should never have gotten emergency use authorization. And we have been saying for a very long time, they should never have come to the market. They should never have been authorized, let alone now being licensed and approved or put on childhood schedules. This is really, I believe that there is fraud going on here. It has not been fully proven, but that is one of the many legal tasks ahead of us, is to really demonstrate the fraud.
Thank you so much, Mary. Now, coming over to are you familiar with this treaty that just got published? What do you think about the treaty? I mean, it has those curious words of New World Order couched in the title of the treaty, and the World Health Organization, spearheading this, and the fact that all countries would come under this, and it would basically certainly surrender the doctor-patient relationship, and even countries in their own national sovereignty. And let alone the individual. Any commentary on that document and what it could mean and how we can fight back against that?
Yeah. Well, it's a draft right now. The World Health Organization is contemplating a new treaty that would amend its constitution. Even now, for decades, the World Health Organization has had international health regulations, which is, in fact, what sort of triggered the US to announce a public health emergency back in 2020, right? It was that the World Health Organization first announced in January 2020 there is a public health emergency of international concern. And then that triggered the US HHS secretary to say there's an emergency. So this is very significant, right? And we know that the World Health Organization has been working literally hand in glove with the World Economic Forum. And we know that Klaus Schwab, at the head of the World Economic Forum, has been talking about the fourth industrial revolution and about how we are moving by 2030 to a new world order, right? Where you will own nothing, but you will be happy, which should make everybody very nervous that somebody's telling us that they're going to take all our property away. I think what we've seen globally in the last 2 years was a kind of global coup d'etat. I mean, you can't have 196 countries working in lockstep without there having been planning. I mean, that's clear that there was planning involved. And a lot of that coordination comes through these international health regulations at the World Health Organization. So I think we, as a health freedom advocacy community and a freedom advocacy community, we absolutely have to be paying enormous attention to this treaty, this draft treaty within the World Health Organization. We also need to be paying a lot of attention, Jonathan, to the whole notion of passports, right? Of vaccine or health passports, which is, again, in a draft form, quite far along in the European Union. But even in the United States, even though there's not been an announcement of a federal passport. In fact, President Biden's spokesperson, Jen Psaki, has said, oh no, we're not contemplating a federal credential. 27 states are already working on an interoperable vaccine credential. And many, important places like the Financial Times are already openly talking about how these passports will be the basis for digital central bank currencies. And I think we got a good glimpse of what that looks like in Ottawa a couple of weeks ago, where the government was very unhappy with the truckers who were protesting, and they simply froze their bank accounts, right? So think of what that would mean if basically there's an ID for every person and they know your sort of all the information about you, where you are, what you're doing, where your bank account is. And if your behavior is, not sanctioned, poof, they basically cut you off. You are canceled, right? You can't buy anything. You can't go anywhere. That's what we're already starting to see glimpse of. That's where this goes. And that's why it's so important for people to understand this isn't really about COVID shots. I think they've clearly worldwide pulled back from that right now for the moment. But this is about a much bigger agenda, which is digital central bank currencies. The US just put out an executive order about this. This is about vaccine passports. This is about a new, much more centralized public-private kind of governmental structure, which they euphemistically called stakeholder capitalism or public-private partnerships. But really, we are looking at a fascist model. This is corporatism. This is where the global, incredibly powerful corporations basically control governments. And we see that through the Bill Gates and Bill and Melinda Gates and through his work, but we see this through BlackRock, we see this through Vanguard. These mega global corporations their holdings, their assets they dwarf national GDPs. So gross domestic product. So I think we really do have to try to take in this bigger picture and sort of a corollary to this bigger picture that is starting to really come into view is how hard big tech and these global institutions, governments, media are struggling to censor people from explaining what's happening and how much propaganda there is and how much distraction there is from what's really happening. So I think, this is a time for all of us who have some glimmer that there's real efforts to change the whole structure of the global governance and global economy. We really have to be sort of understanding what's happening and speaking out about it.
So what's happened is that after millions of people were labeled dead from COVID without actual evidence, they have consolidated these statistics. So right now, the World Health Organization is using this statistic of 6.2 million people having died from COVID-19, right? Not with COVID-19, not as a bystander, right? Meaning you could sample the microbiome, which includes the virome of a human, and probably find any number of sequences that overlap with what they're calling COVID-19. It doesn't matter. They didn't even try that. They didn't even try it. They basically just use suspicion of infection as their criteria. So now they're consolidating.
Something like Epstein-Barr or glandular fever or cytomegalovirus, very common types of viral infections that people could be carrying. And people could basically be then pointed to, well, Jonathan died of Epstein-Barr, even though me having it is not a sign of that it caused my death. That's your point there. I didn't want to stop you from your thoughts of where you're going.
No, that's it. I mean, that's exactly it. You could have been a lifetime smoker. You could have been exposed to radiation. You could have, had any number of health challenges, but they claim that one invisible particle that they're not even testing for because they changed the ICD code requirements killed you. And that's what the World Health Organization presently has welded into their narrative, which is that 6.2 million people died from COVID-19, which requires that they, accrue more power and more centralization of decision-making on the planet for what happens when a new pandemic is, quote, rolled out or declared. So as many of you are aware, thanks in part to the work you're doing, in October of 2019 in New York City, there was an event called Event 201, which was sponsored by the Gates Foundation, World Economic Forum, Hopkins Health, and all of these organizations went ahead and they ran a live pandemic exercise involving a novel form of coronavirus and basically scripted out and acted out the very thing that would happen right after that. So, that's why some out there have criticized this as a plandemic, right? As a scamdemic, as not based on actual reality, because they never again used evidence the way you should to inform health policies and then, of course, come up with a narrative based on statistics that are based in reality. They didn't do that. But what they're doing is they're taking that narrative, which again was baseless, and now they're, stacking the bodies high. This was 6.2 million people died. We have to make sure that next time we declare, meaning the World Health Organization, declare, and whoever is pulling the strings behind them, the shadowy money influence, that we will be the ones who will tell you what will happen next. And we all saw what happened over the past 2 years, right? The largest transfer of wealth and power in human history, which was barely reported on. So this is the unfortunate danger of this further consolidation of the WHO's power. And this is why we need together to raise awareness. In fact, what I would love to do, Jonathan, is to share the campaign.
Yeah, people need to know.
Yeah, because the thing is one thing to hear this development, it's sort of upsetting, but another thing to know that there's a lot we can do, which is Stand for Health Freedom, a nonprofit organization, has put together a campaign, which was rolled out yesterday, actually, and already has 20,000 signatures, which is important because the goal is 100,000, which will then be sent to lawmakers and the president and will be, a direct reflection of how important it is that they know that this issue is extremely important to us, that our sovereignty as a nation and therefore as individuals is on the line, literally, as the World Health Organization goes ahead and starts welding together this new treaty. So together we can send a very clear message that this is not acceptable. If you believe in parental rights, informed consent, bodily sovereignty, you want to be able to travel freely, in this country and between countries, trade with other countries, or have a business yourself in this country. This is what the World Health Organization's new treaty would effectively give them the power to interfere with. And that is why this is such an important issue. So go ahead and, click the link, take the action. It only takes a few seconds. And, I think together we'll have quite an impact on raising awareness about how important this issue really is.
Thank you, Say. And I think that when people do that, they take the time to take a few seconds to sign it. It's a great feeling of knowing you're part of the solution. You've taken the time to do that. A lot of people will watch certain things, get angry about certain things, maybe complain to their friends and family of all the rights and liberties that have been taken away. But what do we do? And it's what we do that matters, and then that's what counts. And then the other thing is, once people do that and sign that, then they can send that. We encourage you to send that to your friends and family, encourage them to do it. Certainly those that are believers in what you understand and believe, send it to those people. That's your tribe, and invite them to be a part of it. The other guys, maybe send them something like my series or something else that is going to help them to get on board with us and help stand for them, because we're standing for them when we do these things, which is a beautiful thing. We stand for those that oppose us, because they don't want to live in the world that they're trying to and helping, and they're brainwashed to create it, but they don't even want to live in that world. No one wants to live in that world. It's a terrible world. So which then makes you start thinking about dark forces or dark energy or dark entities that are orchestrating such events, because who in their right mind would want this reality? Like, who wants to live in that, and why? What do you think? Well, how would you answer that?
Well, I think that we're in a beautiful moment where, after going through the past 2 years and seeing the agendas, unfold and ultimately fall apart, we are starting to see a lot of people really wake up to what's going on. And, ultimately it's still up to us to go ahead and form ourselves and share information that is going to actually reflect real issues. And, this is a moment where we can learn from the past 2 years, continue to stand up for ourselves and to make our voices heard. And so I think that ultimately, in the past, before the days of the internet, this sort of thing happened all the time. Big power grabs would happen and no one would even know. But we live in a different moment. We have the internet, we are still free in that regard. We have information being shared. And this is a really beautiful thing. So, it's by no means about telling someone what to do. It's more about informing them of the issues, seeing that there's a real downside, to say it lightly, to what's happening with the World Health Organization. I mean, do you want an international, board to make the decisions for your health, for your family, for your child? Do you want them determining what gets injected into them so that they can move freely around the world or make a living? This is fundamentally what the World Health Organization is wanting. And they're doing it because they're saying that they care so much about your health. I always think about this, Jonathan. If these international organizations cared so much about the health and well-being, especially of those in really underdeveloped and poor nations, they would send them all the best vaccine ever invented, right? Which is safe food, safe water. This would be a sign that they really care about the health of the world. And this is, to me, what we're in this huge transition where people are waking up. They're seeing now clearly, no, this isn't really just about health, if at all, and that instead it's about control, it's about power. And insofar as we're seeing that, it's about us standing up and taking actions, being a bit brave here and going ahead and say things that are going to be a little uncomfortable perhaps to those who aren't aware, but that's the risk you take when you're really trying to do good.
Hey, Jonathan here, and I'm with Tom Barnett, and we were at an amazing rally today that was super heartfelt. You had Graham Hood and Alex Cooney and yourself, Tom Barnett, and others that spoke to the people and were truly serving the people. And I think that was I think people would go insane if they didn't think that anyone was actually there to serve them. And it's these daily fear conferences that have nothing to do with serving us. It's makes you feel completely alien. So it was a beautiful event, beautiful people such as Tom that poured out their hearts and their service to humanity. And love your work, man. Respect what you're doing. And Tom's ability to articulate how we stand in our truth and for ourselves and our rights and understanding these principles, I think is very powerful. And Tom comes from that place of power. So I'd love you to talk to the audience about that. I think a lot of people feel powerless right now, Tom. What would you say to someone that's feeling powerless? How can you help someone operate and stand in their power?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's big, obviously, at the moment. There's a lot of disenfranchisement, a lot of disempowerment going around. So really what we've got to do is look at what's happening. Where does that come from? Because a lot of the times people become a victim because of what they're shown on the TV, for example, or what they're told that they can and can't do. But that's sort of really relegating ourselves to that world of being a child, where we're told by our parents that we're not allowed to stay up, we're not allowed to, go out and play with our friends. We're told what to do. And some of us never grow beyond that. So really at the core of things I'm finding, it's about people who have, I got a fan club. It's about people who haven't really gone through the trauma. Right? So it's like, it's not just a matter of what pill can I take or what line can I learn, what can I say to somebody? It's not about that. It's where does it come from? It's always about that. So that's getting back connected to yourself. To connect to yourself, it helps if you connect it back to the land, back to nature. And then once you do that, you got to do some work. It's not, it's like health, we talk about that. It's like people go, I'm unhealthy, what pill can I take? But it's about, well, how do I think? How do I feel? How am I sleeping? How am I relating to the cycles of nature? And then what are my decisions about what goes into my body and my mind for that matter? What am I exposing myself to? So it's a holistic approach. So when people are feeling disempowered, it's not just one thing, it's a connection first and foremost. Without that, it's really not going to go too far. And from there, there's the work that needs to be done on getting back to yourself and coming back into who really tells you what to do. Like, do you let people tell you what to do, or do you get back to yourself and you decide? You decide what you do with your life. And for a lot of people, that means reconnecting to a faith in something greater than themselves. Then that can have authority over you. But that word authority too, it's got the word author in it. So for me, I'm not really letting other people write the story for what I live. I'm writing for myself.
I appreciate that. That's awesome. And I think that, man, it's so heartfelt, and it's the groundedness that you're talking about is about not reading a script. We're used to actors. We're used to people putting something on. That's what we see when we watch the television, which we shouldn't do because it fills you with fear and programs you to think irrationally. But it's this act. And so we're all trying to get the right lines instead of getting grounded and working out what our faith is. What do we stand for? What makes us immovable on something? And I appreciate that. These are great values to anchor into. And I mean, I think
I got one line for you.
Yeah, please help me.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That's the best line. Like, not a lot of people have learned that. The value of just saying no. It's like, I don't consent to that. That's a good offer. Thanks very much. I don't consent to that. I'm doing this. And then that's one of the biggest elements. Instead of just waiting for something to react to, don't be reactive, like act. Like, what do you want to create? What do you want to do with your life? Like, if you get busy doing that, you're not going to notice the other stuff that's going on.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one thing that I learned from the time that we've connected is that you think outside the box and you're willing to do things that a lot of people aren't willing to do, but it all comes from the way you think. So firstly, somehow your mind is not enclosed when they say you something like, well, no jab, no fly. If you want to be selfish and not get the vaccine, well then too bad. Life is going to suck. No fun for people that don't vax. But you don't feel like when you hear that on the news, it doesn't make you feel like you can't fly. You're planning a trip overseas. So, I mean, how do you navigate that?
It's all about creativity. So I don't watch the news, I don't hear it. But at the end of the day, if I want to do something, I'm going to do it. I don't really care about other people's opinions. I think that's one of the things that sets people apart who are willing to lead or willing to go their own way, blaze their own trail, is because they don't fear criticism. They don't really care what somebody else is going to say about them or how they're going to look at them a certain way or like jeer at them and point at them. It's like, let them. I don't care. So I'm focused on where I want to go. So when it comes to solutions, yeah, there's some solutions as far as the law goes, like learning a little bit about rights. What are they offering and what ground do they have to stand on? And then what ground do we have to stand on? Usually it's in our favor. But outside of that, it's about being creative. If I can see point B over there and there's a mountain, I'll either go around it or over it or under it, or I'll figure out some other way. There's always a way. And if you want to find it, you'll find it. That's what it comes down to.
Good on you. All right, thanks so much, Tom. You're a champion. I love what you stand for and how that helps people to think outside the box and be powerful rather than powerless, be filled with hope and love versus filled with fear and ultimately hate. I think that's the connection. Fear leads to hate. So get out of fear, because that's the trap that they're all trying to trap us in. And we don't have to live in that place. Thanks a lot, bud.
Thanks, John.
They're trying to bury the data. I mean, that's where it ends up at the end. Laurie, were there any particular stories that sat with you more heavy when it came to wrong treatments with COVID and the outcome that had for patients, or with vaccine adverse events, what you've believed to have been that? Any particular stories that have been traumatic or painful for you to witness, particularly that kind of have remained with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've seen several cases. I've seen some where I feel like the patients can't advocate for themselves, or the family can't, and they come in on, we see a lot of the vitamin protocols, and family will come in and bring it in for them or ask them to be on it, and the facilities are saying, absolutely not, there's no need for that, and they won't do it. And I've seen people get worse. I've seen young people, actually there was one younger person who ended up having a trach and they couldn't speak, and they got worse, and their family tried to bring them in different kinds of supplements that they had heard about and researched, and the hospital's like, absolutely not, we're not taking outside medications. Well, then they were asked, would you prescribe them? No. And they ended up having, months of rehabilitation and having to learn, basically to swallow again, to talk again, and being on feeding tubes, and unnecessary additional surgical treatments, potentially unnecessary. And it's sad, and I'm seeing myself in them, I'm seeing my family members in them, and knowing, they have a loss of a job after that, and they have to learn how to live again after that, and potentially, get worse. I don't always get to see the end result, and I'm imagining in my head all the work that they're going through that could have been prevented.
Oh, wow. It's kind of easy when you just glance through data and you don't even read the individual stories. VEAs, for me, I can just look at the numbers and go, oh, look, that's where the numbers are at. Yeah, now I'm going to use that to help convince people. But then when I click the individual stories, then I say, this is actually not very fun anymore. This is actually, the more I know about these stories, the more traumatic and troubling it is to think about what people are going through right now. And it's absurd, because you kind of like walk around, you look outside, you see the cars driving by, you're like, well, life seems to be like normal, planes flying overhead, people walking, often smiling and connecting. It doesn't seem like anything is wrong. How come? Why are you so audacious to say that there's something majorly going wrong in the world right now, and there's potentially, I don't know if you go as far as to saying there's a mass genocide program happening right now. I don't know what you think, but how do you deal with this polarity in perception?
It's challenging. You're definitely, right now, you're definitely being told not to say anything against it. You're not being told to put your 2 cents in. You just shut up and do what you're supposed to do. And that's not me. And to see something that doesn't seem right, or see somebody who's suffering, that's why I got into this field, is to talk to them and to help them heal, and not just go in and, bandage a wound, but to actually speak to the human and talk them through it and say that everything's going to be okay. And I'm finding it challenging to say that to people. I don't know that everything's going to be okay with the way that things are being treated, and I don't want to lose hope, and I don't want for them to lose hope. And so it's been a really inner wrestling time for not just me, but many people in healthcare, and then to see that happening with people who are in life or death situations, really, essentially. They come in with a respiratory infection, and they're ending up in these life or death situations. It's so challenging.
Lori, what's it like for you not being able to say everything's going to be okay? What's that like for you to not be able to say that sometimes?
It's very challenging, and I want to be truthful, and I am truthful. I am resolved not to lie to people, and I have faith, and so I definitely pray with people, and I will tell them I will be there for them, and I let them know everything that I can and will do. I work to give people options. That's something I was taught in nursing school, is you give them all their options. And hey, have you asked the doctor about this? And that's a possibility. Maybe you should ask, and try to find other ways to encourage, to pray for, to be a rock for them without feeling like I'm lying to them. It's hard. And I'm not gonna lie, there's times I go home and I cry, and I wonder what else I could do. I remember one particular person who, she was fairly young, she had a stroke. She was learning to walk again, learning to talk again, having trouble swallowing. She's eating, pureed food. And she said to me, I wish I would have just died. And I can't imagine being in her position, being so independent and being able to do everything normally that we take for granted every day. And then all of a sudden this, and, all I could tell her was that, so many people were praying for you. They were praying that you would survive. And if God had said to them, but she's not going to be the same, and she's not going to be able to do all the things that she could before. And everyone was saying, yeah, that's okay. We'll take her. We'll take anything we can get, anytime we can get with her. And I said, you are an answer to a prayer, just as you are. And she cried, and she showed me pictures of what she looked like before the stroke and what she used to do. She was very active. And, and I go home and I think about that, about the loss of independence and the loss of health and the loss of the ability to just get up and walk out of bed and go to the bathroom. Now you have to press a button and ask somebody to put on your pants for you and to feed you food that's pureed, and what that would be like. And it tears my heart out, and I definitely go home and cry for the people I see like that.
Wow. What caused the stroke with this woman?
Well, in my thought is potentially it was from the vaccine. I don't know that for a fact, but given that she was young and didn't have previous history, that's a high probability.
Got it. What age bracket?
In her 40s.
Did she think it was at all connected to the vaccine?
I don't think she had considered that at all. It's not even being talked about.
So she's not in Vegas?
I don't think so. Last I knew, she was not. No.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us? What's anything else in your core message of the things that you feel are most compelling for people to hear and know about right now?
I want people to know that there are really good doctors and nurses out there, and that most of the people working in the field care, and they're not, looking to be malicious, even if they are following these protocols. But there are some that really do care, and although there have been times where I wanted to walk away from the field, I've had, a couple of us talk, and if people who are caring and who are standing up for things leave, then what's going to happen? I don't know that I would want my kids, my family, my friends to go see anybody at the hospital or go to the doctor's office. I mean, it's a scary time, but to find people that you can trust, and that there are some good ones out there, and there are ones who are looking to speak up on behalf of patients and to do what's right. We're out there and stand strong.
Awesome. And in regard to how you were able to find your strength and your courage, what would you say to the people that really don't know how to find that? And that may be connected to your faith, so you're welcome to go there if that's part of it. But what is that causes you to not only be someone that is a nurse that's in the system right now, but you have your own mind, it appears to me that you're very uncompromising in the things that you believe, and that you're willing to speak out like this. Your face is now, you're going to be in every place that this will be put in. That could have ramifications, but you don't seem like fretful about it. Help people to understand where that comes from so they can find that.
Well, for me, it's definitely my faith. I know that I have a calmness about me that I will always have everything I need. If I lose my job, I will have a place to sleep. I will find food. It will be okay. I may not live in the same manner that I live now in the way that I want, but I will live with my faith, and I'll be put where I'm supposed to be. And I would say if somebody doesn't have faith, that to find other like-minded people and to not shy away from getting in touch with people who care and supporting each other and holding each other up. And there's going to be a time when you feel down and you're going to come home crying, and you need to have someone there that'll be there for you and be your shoulder, and you get to be there for them. I know that there's a lot of isolation, and I would say right now, find your people, stand together.
Thank you, Lori. I appreciate you taking the time to interview with me. My wife's name is Lori, of all names. Yeah. So good people. Lorries are good people. Thank you, Lorries that are out there.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for taking the time. It was excellent, and it was really great to hear from you, and they're very helpful and practical and very telling in regards to what's happening there from the ground as a nurse, working directly with people that have had COVID and injuries from the COVID vaccine, as Laurie believes, based on the correlation of data and her experience as a nurse. And these are the things that people need to consider. And I appreciate you sharing them so that people can awaken and understand what's going on here and stand strong and stand up, be counted, and march forward into a better tomorrow and go with God.
Thank you. Thank you so much for getting the word out there. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Laurie. I hope you've been encouraged during this episode to take a stand against tyranny and stand up for your medical freedom. It's just amazing how many people are putting themselves on the front line to protect our rights. The more people who stand up collectively against the oppressive rule of the government, the better our chances of regaining our voice to choose what we will and won't allow. This is a critical time to do just that, because there is no denying that the pandemic was only a test run, and the government, big pharma, and medical authorities have much bigger plans to strip from us our right to medical freedom. Hi, it's Jonathan. I'm so glad that you joined me, and I'm so glad that we got to experience this life-changing journey together. Now, we're wrapping everything up. This episode is now over. This is a very quick message to remind you that we're closing down our program completely now that this episode is over. So don't miss this. Take advantage of this while you can. If you want all the free gifts, the over $2,500 of free gifts that come inside of the gold package, the $1,500, $1,591 of free gifts that we've just added in with the answer to autoimmune disease, brain healing breakthrough, and heal vaccine injury recovery and immune protocol. These are tools that will absolutely change your life. Amid all the other amazing gifts, the 60 full-length interviews. We've just added 10 full-length interviews to your program. Don't miss out on those. They're fantastic. The audios, the transcripts, the books printed out, delivered to your door, the DVDs, the 9 episodes, the 9 bonus episodes, episode 10, 11, and 12. It just keeps going. The 16 special reports that have not been released before, that you have not seen, with our amazing experts, all detailed exactly what you get inside of these great reports, and so much more here on this page. Don't miss out on this. This is absolutely life-changing, and I want you to have access to all of this. So all you have to do is click the button or the banners here on this page. That will get you started immediately, and I look forward to seeing you inside of this program.